Just seeing the field for the first time, coming out of the stands where it's so dark and shadowy, and coming out of the tunnel in sunlight, the blue sky and the field, so amazingly green with white lines, and that sunlight, the smell, it was unforgettable. My dad knew what a big fan I was, watching the games with him on TV and listening on radio. So he took me down to the stadium, Briggs Stadium then, and we sat out in the bleachers. I was, 9 years old, I guess. It was 1956, early in the season, and we were playing the old Kansas City Athletics, but I barely paid them any attention. I couldn't believe I was finally seeing the Tigers in person. I must have stared at LK line the entire game. That first time is something you never forget. Later, when I got the opportunity, I got my dad tickets to the 68 and 1984 World Series. I took him to the game. It was a way for me to say, thanks, Dad.
Every fan, every boy or girl who has ever thrilled to the sight of the old English D on a white jersey and blue baseball cap remembers their first exposure to the magic of the Tiger tradition. The tradition is more than just a sign of spring. To generation after generation of Detroiters, it is spring. It is the national game, but maybe nowhere is baseball more a part of the fabric, the history of the community than it is here in Detroit. The Tiger tradition spans the beginning and the end of this century, links the fans and the players in the most constant and enduring passion to their lives. It has been passed from grandfather to father, to daughter to son, in a common ritual that is as timeless and natural and reassuring as the game itself.
Tiger Tradition with your host, Ray Lane, featuring Al Kaline, Dave Bergman, Willie Horton, Bill Freehand, and George Cantor.
And what is it about baseball, and Tiger baseball in particular, that transcends other sports, that links the generations, that survives victory and defeat, depression and war, strikes and work stoppages, that brings us back and back and back, and always returning to the excitement of our youth and the tradition that has meant so much to our lives? Perhaps part of the magic of the Tiger tradition is its indefinable quality. If you've ever loved this team, it's a safe bet you will always love this team. Show me a true Tiger fan, and I will show you someone who has at least once said, that does it, I give up, I'm not gonna let them disappoint me again. But we always come back, and ultimately, we are always glad we did. It's as if we have a common investment in this team, and we wait for our payoff. Weren't 1968 and 1984 worth every pain we ever felt at the end of a disappointing season? And don't we all have a favorite moment, a favorite player, a favorite year that has become part of our collective memory? Caring about the Tigers combines those emotions, those memories of soaring happiness and utter despair. It is a game of the heart as much as the mind. And it is a game of statistics and names and strategies. A game that has come down to us through the years, passed from one generation to another, one Detroiter to the next, from Cobb to Greenberg to Kaline to Trammell to Fielder. A legacy that will never die as long as the game is played in our town. The Tiger Tradition. With apologies to some of the old-timers among Tiger fans, and also to youngsters who have only recently come into their love for the game and the hometown team, let's now take sort of a baby boomer's look at the recent history of the club. Any kid growing up in the 50s and 60s in Detroit can tell you that the title, The Agony and Ecstasy, best describes this colorful era of Tiger history. Repeated disappointment taught the post-war generation about real pain in the sporting world. But name your cliche, gold at the end of the rainbow, light at the end of the tunnel. It still won't live up to the joy and relief that descended on our community in 1968. Detroit News columnist George Cantor, then a beat writer covering the Tigers in the tumultuous 60s, has been both a fan and reporter of the roller coaster ride that has been Major League Baseball in our town. He suffered, as we all did, in the heartbreaking 50s, and exulted in October of 1968 at the results of that amazing World Series. George has watched the Tigers go up and down and down and up for 45 years.
Watching the Tigers in the 50s was excruciating because you knew that no matter how good they looked on paper before the season, they were never going to be good enough to catch the Yankees. And we'd sit in front of school in March or April and we'd say, well, let's see, we can get a 280 season out of Bowling and we can get 20 home runs out of Maxwell, and you know that Heft and Larry are solid and Foytak is there and Bunning is coming up. We're going to catch them this year. And then after 56, they had got 20 home runs out of Kaline and Maxwell and Boone, and we got 20 win seasons out of Larry and out of Heft, and Parade magazine came out with this big article saying this is the year for the Tigers, this is when they're going to win. And we got so excited, but later in the same article they quoted Yogi Berra, and he said something like, you don't play the game on computers. And we said, oh, nuts, you know, we were really crushed. And, you know, sure enough, they didn't, and the Yankees won again. Those were, I would say that the Yankees blighted my childhood.
The Yankees were a dominant team in baseball, all of baseball, and of course they had the in the Mantle era, Berra, Howard, Scour, and of course they had a great pitching staff headed by Whitey Ford for so many years, and they were the dominant team in all of baseball back in those years, and that was the main reason why we and other teams did not go on and win pennants and get in the World Series, because of the great Yankee teams.
The 61 team came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting this team to be a contender. They'd been really a disappointment in 60, but they got Norm Cash in the offseason, and he had the season of his life in 61. And then they got Rocky Colavito having the best year of his life, Frank Larry pitching just tremendously all through the year. And this was a tremendous team, and they brought up a couple of rookies, Jake Wood and Steve Boris. And Dick Brown did a tremendous job catching that year, and Billy Bruton came over and was tremendous. Wood and Bruton gave the Tigers something they never had, a base-stealing threat. People would go nuts when they'd steal a base because the Tigers never ran. You know, they were never a running team. It was a tremendously exciting year, but you knew, you were just waiting for the safe to fall on your head, because the Yankees, that was the year of Maris and Mantle. And I remember my family, we all went into New York for the big, climactic three-game series with the Yankees over Labor Day weekend, and we went to that Friday night game, and it was 0-0 going into the ninth inning, 2 outs in the last of the ninth, and 3 dinky little singles through the left side, one right after the other, just big bouncers through the left side. Game over. Yankees win 1-0. I was crushed. You know, I remember walking across the field at Yankee Stadium with my dad and my brother, and I was just absolutely crushed. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go anywhere. This was it. This was the end of the dream. We knew there was no way in the world they were going to win any more of those games. 67 was very disappointing because they blew it, and they knew they blew it. They lost a bunch of games down the stretch that they never should have lost. Their relief pitching collapsed in a critical series against the Red Sox at Tiger Stadium. They made a whole bunch of fielding mistakes in a big game against the Senators coming down the stretch. They just blew a lot of games. And I remember that last game at Tiger Stadium where the Tigers had to win it, last game of a doubleheader, to force a playoff with Boston. And I was covering the team then for the Free Press. And I went down into the stands because I wanted to get into the clubhouse first. And I went down and sat with my father and my brother in the stands. And there was a guy who jumped on top of the Tiger dugout. And everybody thought he was drunk, and they were laughing at him and pointing, and I was sitting close, and I was only a few rows from this guy, and he was crying. There were tears coming down his cheeks. He was in an attitude of prayer on top of the Tiger dugout, just praying that McAuliffe could pull this game out somehow. And, of course, Dick hit into the double play and ended the season.
And I think when you lose on the last day of the season, I don't think anybody left that clubhouse for an hour and a half or two. And a lot of heads were between our legs crying and stuff like that because we'd been so close, and we didn't achieve it. And I think when we came, whether somebody was talking about it, whether we just all felt we're not going to let that thing slip away, and that was a commitment that we came to spring training with.
We actually didn't lose it the last day. We lost it per game the last day. I think we lost it back early part of the year, where I didn't play that much, could have made a difference in the game, in one game. Or Kaline, I think he broke his hand. That could have made a difference in the game. I had a bad Achilles operation that year that I didn't play the whole full game. They played me 5, 6, 7 innings and get me out the rest of it up. Because after we lost
last game of the season, Dick McAuliffe, who had not hit into a double play all year long, hit a one-hopper to second. They turned a double play, and we ended up losing in 67. We had the tough. We had to play 2 doubleheaders back-to-back, and a lot of credit should go to the Angels, the last place ball club. They really battled us tough. Late in the season, last of the year, teams sort of roll over at that time, particularly teams in the second division, last place. They sort of just go through the motion. But they played us very tough. They ended up beating us 1 game, and that was the game that cost us.
Spring training. I guess I tell you, I bet 95% of our guys was in spring training 2 or 3 weeks way before we report. We was ready to go. We was anxious to get out of the house. We worked out. We talked to each other through the winter. So we know when we went to spring training, we was going to win that year. It just a matter of how we was going to pull out in front. Because if you look back in that team, I hit 36, 38 home run that year. It wasn't only Willie Horton. We had each and every day, every week, somebody was different doing something. Even the guys on the bench was very important.
It helped us the following year. Everybody came to spring training with a great attitude, knowing that in our hearts we had the best team in 67. We did not win, and everybody came to spring training in 68 with a great attitude, a team attitude instead of personal goals. And, of course, a great year to go in 68 to go on and win, become world champions.
And talking to Freehan, and he was talking about the necessity of staying focused and how hard it was in baseball. He said if you play football, you know, it's just week to week, and anybody can get themselves up for a game from week to week. But just every day and all through the summer, this grind away pressure. He said, we've got to keep ourselves up. We can do it. We've just got to stay focused and keep ourselves up. And I remember that because late that season, late in August of 68, they went into New York, and they lost they played a Friday night game that went something like 14, 15 innings and had to be called off because of the curfew, and then they came back and lost 3 in a row, including a game in which Rocky Colavito beat him as a relief pitcher for the Yankees. And Freehan went into the clubhouse after those games and scrawled on the blackboard, anybody who thinks the season ended today doesn't belong here. And I think that brought him out of it.
That's right. He spoke for all of us. And that's what that little meeting was about. That's what it was all about. We didn't point at each other. We used to get on each other in a way of helping each other. You know, when we lose together. When we win together. But we had to look in the mirror and say, look here what we did. We gave all our responsibility away. Now it's time to look at ourselves and say, let's get out there and play baseball.
68 series, and yeah, there was just so many big plays, and there was so much emotion at Tiger Stadium. And I can remember the 5th game at Tiger Stadium when it looked like the fifth game at Tiger Stadium, and it looked like the Tigers were just going to be humiliated. They had lost. They were down 3-1, and then Orlando Cepeda hit a 3-run homer in the 1st inning off of Lolich, and you know, you could just feel the air going out of the ballpark. And up in the press
there was pressure on us from the start because we were playing the St. Louis Cardinals, who were the 67 champions, the world champions. So we knew that they were odds-on favorites and an outstanding, talented team. They had been there before, we had not. Then to dig yourself the hole that we did, falling 3 games to 1 behind. Then to come back, and I guess since we had come back so often in 68 from what looked to be defeats later on in the ball game, I think we won 40-some games or so, you know, from the 7th inning on.
We're at the top of the 5th inning here at Tiger Stadium. Cardinals leading 3-2. Mickey Lolich on the mound. Javier, the batter, Brock Short, lead out at second base. Straight away out in the outfield, that includes Willie in left field. Javier now looking for the pitch he can handle. He does. Base hit out to left field. Keep an eye on Horton. Plays it on 1 hop. The throw to the plate. And Freehan makes a tag on Brock. He's fallen out by
And then it comes down to letting Lolich bat for himself in the middle of the big rally that won the game, and him coming through with a single.
Hey, the second guessers can be out on full force. Mayo Smith letting Lolich bat for himself here. Here's the pitch, fly ball, right field. Hey, it's going to drop in, base hit. Base hit for Lolich, and Smith looks like a genius.
It was a tough pitch that I think it was Joe Horner who was pitching for the Cardinals, and it was a tough pitch he made on him, and Kaline fought it off and hit just a little dinker over the infield. And I think a less intelligent and a less resourceful hitter might have gotten eaten up by that pitch.
Well, this could be the turning point now. Bases loaded with Tigers. Kaline has been tough fouling off those pitches. Horner delivers, and a fly ball out to center field. It's going to drop in for a base hit. Lolich, Easton will score from third. Here comes McCullough in from second. Runners at first and third, and the Tigers take a 4-3 lead. Nice going out, Kaline.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't one of my better ones, but it came at the right time. It was not a home run or anything like that, but it was a base hit that scored a couple runs, tied the ball game up, and of course we went on to win that game and then win the next two. But it was the Cardinals had a lot of confidence. They had an experienced ball club who had been in the World Series before, and of course they had the great Gibson going for them, and they were very confident that they were going to win in that series. And it looked like Tigers were going to, you know, lose it after 3-1, and but I think that game there, and then we went back to St. Louis the next game, and we scored 10 runs in that one inning. And I think the confidence sort of left the Cardinals because they were not used to seeing a team put up that many runs against them.
I can remember
in one inning.
The 7th game in St. Louis, and adopting sort of a fatalistic attitude. You know, I've been a Tiger fan since the 50s. They're not going to win. You know, it's nice that we got this far and that they put up a good show at least, but we're not going to win. I mean, they got Gibson coming in here. It's over. And I was one of the official scorers that day up in the press box in St. Louis, and trying to keep my objectivity because I had a ball game to cover and I was the baseball writer for the Free Press, and sitting there for 7 innings with my hands ice cold. I mean, just so nervous. I just didn't want to take my eyes off the field. I didn't want to breathe. The tension was just incredible. Nothing through the 7th inning, and Lolich picking guys off base, and it was you couldn't breathe going into the 7th inning. And then Flood misplaying Northrup's drive over his head, and I remember just staring out at the field and saying, "Oh my God!" And they were going to win. This was incredible. I couldn't believe it even as I was seeing it.
I think I was more nervous going out in the bottom of the 9th with Mickey Lolich going out there, and I got the first 2 guys out, and then Mike Shannon hit a home run. I walked to the mound. I wondered what the heck I was going to say. And he said, "What are you coming out here to tell me?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll do anything if you just get this last guy out." And he said, "Well, get me a couple hamburgers after this game, so let's get back down and get him out."
And maybe it comes down to this final batter. Lolich delivers, foul territory, popped up by McCarver, freehand about 10 feet away from the plate. He makes the catch. The Tigers have won the 1968 World Series. What a great comeback by this team for the Motor City.
Tiger tradition will continue after this.
Maybe the 1970s, another up and down Tiger era, were easier to take for those of us who finally had our prayers answered in 1968. The last vestiges of that classic championship club put on a great show for us in 1972, narrowly missing the World Series by a 1-run game in the American League playoffs. Following that season, it was a downward cycle for the Tigers as they strained to rebuild. In the mid-decade, they gave us a star who was almost a World Series by himself, the fabulous Bird, Mark Goodrich. But rebuild is exactly what the Tigers did. The Tigers once again took us to the mountaintop with a team that dominated the game like few in baseball history.
There are a lot of elements about that '84 season. You know, getting off to that enormous start after the euphoria of being 35-5 wore off. Everybody became very, very nervous because you figured, you know, when's it going to happen? When are they going to blow? And they just never did. That was an awesome performance, a tremendous team.
Darrell Evans was a teammate of mine in 1983 in San Francisco, and when I got to spring training with only a week left in spring training, he said to me, he says, "Wait till you see these guys play." And I said, "Whoa, you know, we got something that could be very special this year." Then we went to Boston. And this is even after the no-hitter that Jack Morris threw. You know, there's a lot of excitement early in the season. But you know it's a long season, and you know things can change overnight. And we went to Boston, and I believe we scored like 8 runs in the first 2 innings, and they came back and scored 12 runs or something. And then these guys came back and scored another 6. It turned out to be a slugfest, but the thing that I noticed is that these guys were determined to win. And Sparky let everybody play, and everybody did play. So everybody was into every game. And Then, of course, with the big series in Toronto, or with Toronto, I should say, where they were starting to catch us because the whole time they were basically right on our heels. They were the only team that could possibly catch us. And then when we won those series, I said, you know, this team's got a real good chance to go to the World Series this year.
With a hero in almost every game, the Tigers not only won the Eastern Division in '84, but took 3 straight from the Kansas City Royals in the American League Championship Series. And the Detroit Tigers were on their way to face the San Diego Padres in the World Series.
Templeton waiting on a 2-2 pitch. Swing and a ground ball to first base. Bergman has it, makes the play unassisted. The Tigers have won the first game of the World Series. Here's the pitch. He swings. There's a drive to left. It's deep. It is way back, and it is gone. A 2-run homer by Trammell. A 2-0 lead for the Tigers in the first inning. Shaw ready. Kicks and deals. There's a swing, and there's another drive to left. It's deep, and this one is gone. The second home run by Trammell. The Tigers now lead it 4-1. Whitaker scores. Here comes Trammell running home his second consecutive home run. 2 out of the 9th inning. Tigers lead it 4-2. Here's the windup, and here's the pitch, and he swings as a drive to right. Gets him there. He's got it. The Tigers win it, and they take the series lead to 3 victories to 1.
I think everybody who has followed this team freezes an image of his favorite team in his mind. And I think to people who are a little bit younger, it's going to be Kirk Gibson and hitting that home run in '84 and then just posing in front of the dugout with that just sheer look of brute force on his face. You know, that you were not going to beat Kirk Gibson if you had a wagon load of tanks. You were just not going to beat him.
We'll be back with Tiger Tradition after these messages.
I'll tell you one thing I learned about Detroit fans. They pass it down to the other generation about the history of this city. And that's what's so great about these fans. It's something that they don't keep. They pass it down to their kids, and their kids pass it down. And I think that would make them so great.
You know. How can you love a baseball team? How can you love something as abstract as a baseball team? And yet there is this tremendous love between this community and the Tigers.
These people know and appreciate baseball.
Very knowledgeable fans. They stick behind their team a long time. I think it's the work ethic of the people in Detroit, the factory workers, the people that put in long hours, and I think they appreciate any player that comes and gives 100% and gets their uniform dirty and looks like they're really trying hard, and I think that's all they ask for.
That is the strength of the game, that the lore is passed on from generation to generation. My grandfather saw Ty Cobb play. My father saw Greenberg and Gehringer. You know, I saw Kaline and Cash, and my daughters, see the Tigers of today. And we can all partake in the lore, the seamless web of history that this team entails.
They play the game out there on ball fields from Florida to California to New York and back to Michigan and Trumbull. But it is in the hearts and memories and hopes of their fans that the Detroit Tigers shine the brightest. They have won it all, and they will win it all again, as long as memory exists. As long as Dad tells a story to his kid, as long as old pictures and film and video and baseball cards survive, the Detroit Tigers are always young. In the Tiger tradition, we are always just one opening day away from the next great team. We are all back at the ballpark, in front of our TVs, huddled around our radios at night. There's always October of 1984. Goose Gossage is on the mound, And Kirk Gibson is coming to the plate. For UPN 50 and for the Tiger Tradition, I'm Ray Lane.